Hello, everybody. My name is Adam, and I am on a quest to become the most prolific reviewer of all time. Recently, I broke my elbow, and the doctor recommended 3 weeks in a sling, which you've been seeing over the past 3 weeks of me recording videos, and today is the first day outside of the sling, and I have to say it's much more painful. I guess I have an appointment tomorrow, so I don't know what will happen. It's probably healing correctly, but even if it is healing correctly, it's still about three. Like I think I read it can be 6 to 8 weeks to heal fully, which is unfortunate. But at least I can put clothes on normally, more or less, which is an advantage. Now, but everything I just said to you is very, it's not unimportant to me. It's very important to me, but in the spirit of the movie that I'm going to talk about, it's completely meaningless. Um, I've been watching a lot of things to entertain me, things that I wanted to watch, but nothing that really was intellectually that stimulating, so I thought that I would watch a documentary, and the one that I chose was 2000 Meters to Andrivka. And I chose that because the Ukraine war has had a significant impact on my life, on how much I worry, on my job. I don't want to go into that exactly, but it does have an impact on my job. And I live in Poland, so we're right next door to Ukraine, and people have really strong, passionate feelings about what's going on there. And so when the Russians invaded, the full scale invasion in 2022, it was a huge surprise to everyone. And we were also surprised that the Ukrainians were able to defend Kiev and push them back. Not so much in the east. So, about a year after, there was a push for the Ukrainians to show that they were worthy of the support of the international community by going on the offensive. And this movie documents one part of that offensive where a battalion was charged with taking uh, a meaningless town. Basically, the town is completely meaningless. It's destroyed. It's just a name on a map. And it's heavily fortified. There's mines on both sides of the roads, and there's just a strip of forest which is leading to the town. And that strip of forest has a series of trenches. So the documentary is about how this Ukrainian battle battalion actually achieved its goal in liberating this town, but it came at a really huge cost. I don't know how many people were in the battalion, but it seemed like at least 10 people, 20 people, 30 people died to take this town. And the documentary is good because it gives you what modern warfare really looks like in Ukraine. So they very rarely see the Russians. They only see the Russians when the Russians are dead, basically. And they go trench by trench, and you know, the people who are being heroic and shouting heroic things die, and the people who shout nothing die, you know. And the death is just as very instantaneous. And you have this battalion, and the commanders are in some bunker somewhere, and they're attacked. I think that they were using Skynet or whatever, not Skynet, Elon Musk's thing, Starlink or whatever, before Elon Musk pulled the plug. And so you have like the leaders who are in this room, and there's about 20 of them, and they're giving commands to this battalion who's going like forward. And the battalion are doing like an incredible job. They're like, you can tell that they have love and respect for each other, but it's like, guy is there one day and he gets shot the next day. You know, the guy wants to be really brave and defend his homeland, but he gets shrapnel in his ass and he can't go on any further, you know. And the mission that is documented in this movie is that they want to put the Ukrainian flag somewhere in this town and make like a little bit of a propaganda video. So while they're doing that, the town, as I said, is completely shelled and destroyed. And they put up the flag and they rescue a cat, which is really nice because the cat had been abandoned in this town and was clearly starving to death. So they rescue the cat, they put the flag up, and they leave. And, you know, you think, yes, the pointlessness of war, but, you know, at least they achieved their objective or whatever. And 2-3 months later, the Russians came and took the town back, you know. But the thing is, so it's from the Ukrainian perspective, so you see all these random deaths, but it's not like the Russians are this huge juggernaut who are like bowling over the Ukrainians either. You know, you get the one Russian who's on screen is not an ethnic Russian. He's from some minority somewhere. So, you know, they're living in horrible conditions as well. And so the town falls, and I guess there's 150 Russians in this town. And as they're retreating, the Russians are shelling the town to kill the Ukrainians and the Russians who are left in the town. So that's how much the Russians care about their soldiers. You know, that's how indispensable a Russian life is. It's pretty dispensable. But I don't think that the Ukrainian military leadership should be let off the hook about that situation. And it's really easy to be a backseat driver and say, you know, you shouldn't try to do a frontal attack against a heavily fortified position in modern warfare. But yeah, you shouldn't do a frontal attack on a heavily fortified position in modern warfare because you're going to get shot. The advantage is always to the defender. Like you need about 5 to 1 odds against them. And you don't have 5 to 1 odds if the forest is literally like, it's less than the size of my room wide, you know, and it's full of bushes and stumps and stuff. So I think that this offensive, and I think that later on, so this is the second year of the war, I think later on in the war, the Ukrainians got a lot more creative about their attacks. They invaded Russia, the main Russia, because it wasn't heavily defended. They took a town for a while. They started sinking tankers recently, and they started blowing up infrastructure, fuel infrastructure, things that really hurt Russia. So I think that they probably, and I know why they did it, because they wanted like the support of the West, because they need the support of the West to survive, so they wanted this flashy offensive. But I think it would have been much better if they had just dug in like the Russians did and say, okay, Russia, if you want any more territory, you gotta like work for it, which they're doing now. And, you know, they're losing ground slowly, but at this rate, the Russians would have to take 20, 30 years to conquer the rest of Donbass even, you know. So the Russians' offensive ran out of steam as well. So no one has won this battle. no one has won the war. And yeah, I think that it's just so pointless. And I think that Donald Trump, for example, he is 100%, maybe not like technically a Russian asset, because, but he is acting 100% in the interests of Russia because he thinks that he can get a good deal for his cronies in Ukraine or whatever. So I think that his motives are not exactly honest, but yeah, the war has gone on too long. And like, so it's 2026 almost. So we're coming up on the fourth anniversary of this war, just the full scale invasion. And if you think about the beginning of the war, it started in 2014, so it'll be 10 years, the whole war. So, and the director of the documentary says something like, yes, uh, he feels that people will start to ignore the war and the war will just become one of these frozen conflicts that goes on forever. And yeah, it does seem that that has the chance of happening. So it's really weird because in other conflicts like this, at least when I was growing up, like you think about Bosnia, um, there would be this push to have peacekeepers in the region. And I think maybe that's because the United States has kind of uh, lost its credibility as a peacekeeper because of all of the imperialistic wars in the Middle East. But I think that's the best solution, a demilitarized zone in Donbass, um, and kind of and Crimea also. I think that the realistic solution is something that Russia at the moment is not going to agree to, and it's going to be the death of Putin that causes uh, the collapse of their offensive. But that doesn't mean that Ukraine is going to get everything that they want as well, you know, because they're up against an elephant. But I don't buy that Ukraine should just surrender everything. I think the whole reason that Russia has an argument is because of this ethnic minority in eastern Ukraine. So they need to back off. There needs to be a demilitarized zone, and and that area needs to be free of Russian influence. And then you need to have uh, a free and legitimate referendum about what people in those areas want. Because there were like referendums that the Russians, organized, but it wasn't independently verified and it was a joke, basically. So if you have a demilitarized zone and then there's a referendum in like, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years even. I know it's a long time to keep a place demilitarized, but I think the scale of this conflict is just something that is unexpected, that has shocked people. So I think that's the way to put the foot down and say, okay, Russia, we're giving you this concession because one of the things in the referendum would be that they could join Russia if they wanted to. But the other things would be like, I don't know, semi independence or joining Ukraine or whatever. And then I think whatever Ukraine does later would be completely up to them. And I saw one of the peace proposals, there's like 20 of them, was to limit Ukraine's military to 800,000 men, which is crazy because how do you limit the military of a country that was not the aggressor? Like they tried to do that after the First World War with Germany, but Germany actually invaded Belgium and France. Ukraine didn't do that. I mean, they invaded Russia a tiny little bit, but that was after everything that happened. So yeah, war sucks. War is horrible. War shouldn't happen. especially if you're the biggest country in the world. Why do you need more territory? It doesn't make any sense. And I've been watching a lot of hockey lately, like of different leagues, like NHL, KHL, and why not just focus on hockey, man? You know, it's violent. People might die, probably they don't, and it's enjoyable. It's much more enjoyable to watch that than watch the war that we have now unfolding before our eyes. And maybe one last point is like people believe that if Russia wins in Ukraine, some Baltic countries or Poland is next, and that's always a possibility, but I think you're gonna have a real hard time convincing Russians to go to war with NATO, like a real war with NATO, even without even without American support. And I don't even see how Donald Trump would be able to withhold American support if Russia launched attacks on NATO. But even without that, I think NATO is a formidable opponent, especially Poland and Russia. Like the minute that Poland's got, Russian boots are in Polish territory, I think you can expect very unexpected consequences. And by which I mean I have this conspiracy theory that there are nuclear weapons in Poland. And people never believe me when I say that because it's just a theory. But like if you were Poland and you had the history that Poland has had, I think that you would have them too. So hopefully Russians are smart enough to realize that. All right, that was a chilling last moment for this review. I'm trying to I actually surpassed my goals for the end of January. I think I have 211 subscribers now. So my next goal for the end of January will be 250 subscribers for YouTube. So if you want to do that, that would be great. And if you want to follow me on Spotify, if you're listening on Spotify, that would be great. All right, bye-bye.